was supposed to be attending class at Miami Beach High School, where she was enrolled in honors classes as a senior. A Louisiana clinic is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to challenge another state's restrictive abortion law. Jared Halpern has more from Washington.
A Louisiana abortion clinic wants the Supreme Court to strike down regulations that it argues will leave the state with just one clinic able to perform abortion procedures. The court has already agreed to block the law from taking effect. Now the clinic wants the justices to strike down the law altogether. The regulation requires abortion providers to have admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles. A federal appeals court has upheld the law, but the Supreme Court struck down a similar law in Texas in 2016. If the justices agree to hear the case, it's likely to be decided by next summer.
There's a big push today for religious liberty in the Texas House of Representatives. A hearing is scheduled for this afternoon involving House Bill 3172, also known as the First Amendment Defense Act. Representative Matt Krause is the author of that bill, and he tells AFR's Today's Issues program that the government cannot penalize you or take something from you just for your beliefs on marriage.
We saw it happen in Atlanta with the fire chief. Nothing a part of his job was he doing wrong, except he just happened to write a pamphlet for a Sunday school class endorsing the traditional view of marriage, and he was fired for that. We see others like Chick-fil-A who give money in their private capacity. It has nothing to do with the service, has nothing to do with their employment, has nothing to do with their normal course of business, and they're being penalized by government.
Speaking of Chick-fil-A, the San Antonio City Council recently voted to cancel a contract allowing Chick-fil-A a location inside the city airport. The reason? Some city councilors did not like that Chick-fil-A has given money to Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, two organizations that some councilors argued have anti-LGBTQ records. Because of this, Jonathan Sines of Texas Values is encouraging people today to eat at Chick-fil-A.
We want people to post on social media, use the hashtag #SaveChick-fil-A. A government is banning, barring, and preventing a business from opening up simply because of their religious beliefs that they hold personally. All the information is at SaveChickFilA.com.
It's not fake news. A special hamburger has been created to celebrate a day embraced by cannabis fans. Fox's Jenny Casolo explains.
Carl's Jr. says it will test a CBD-infused burger in Denver on 4/20, April 20th. The burger will be called the Rocky Mountain High Cheeseburger Delight. 2 beef patties with pepper jack cheese served with waffle fries, pickled jalapenos, and topped with Santa Fe sauce infused with hemp-based CBD oil. It will only be available at one Carl's Jr. location in Denver. Customers must be 18 or older to buy it.
And the NFL has announced it will head abroad to play some football 5 times this upcoming season. Most of the games are in London, but there is one matchup scheduled for this November in Mexico City.
There's a particular reason why there is a Back to God radio show. It was about 4 years ago, God called me out of the pulpit and said, Dexter, I need you to go tell my people it's time for them to get back to God, back to my morals, back to my values. This is the thing that you're supposed to do simply because you belong to the Most High God. It's the least that you can do for a God that loves you the way that he does.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
what magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more than economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there. Welcome. Welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. It's great to be with you, and it's great to have another jam-packed show for you. We are going to talk about how Attorney General Barr just shut down a court that was trying to overrule the Obama administration again, and looks like he's found his mettle because he's ready to joust. He says asylum seekers will no longer be bonded out. I don't care what the court says. So we'll get into that. We'll unpack that. We have Kurt Schlichter on. He's going to join us to talk about the Mueller report, which is incoming, the redacted Mueller report, of course. So it will be heavily redacted. And anything that is redacted will be an utter travesty for Democrats who will scream and whine and complain about how it just is impossible for them to get a fair shake out of anything coming out of the Mueller report because it didn't say that Donald Trump was a traitor. So whatever it's going to say, whatever we'll be able to read after we skip over the many, 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 many thousands of lines of redacted text, it's probably going to say something similar to what the summary written by AG Barr actually said. But, let's wait and see what happens, right? Incoming, less than 24 hours, the wait will finally be over. We are also going to talk about the report that President Trump is sending thousands of troops to the U.S. border. And I have to say, it's about time. Like, I know he sent a few last year. I know there were, there was a buildup, et cetera, et cetera. They had very limited rules of engagement, so it was difficult for them to actually do anything other than shoring up fences and laying out concertina wire. But hopefully they'll have an expanded role this time and be able to really assist the Border Patrol in, accomplishing their mission, which is maintaining some semblance of a sovereign nation with a border. Something. You know what I'm saying? So head over to stacyontheright.com and hit the subscribe button. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all Stacy on the Right. Thank you so much to people who are tuning in via radio or on one of the live streams who maybe saw the Missouri Best in the Midwest documentary. Yes, guilty as charged. That's me. It was fun this morning to hear from some friends that they actually didn't know that I did that for a living and that was me. And so one friend relayed that she was at the car wash, the big kind of waterways car washes where you sit inside and your car gets washed and then vacuumed out. And the documentary was on and everyone in the waiting room was watching. So then when her car was ready and she left, that was over the weekend, she then gets ready this morning to come to the meeting that we were at together this morning. And it was on again. And so she got to catch another part of it that she hadn't seen. It's only 30 minutes long. So it was really cool to hear her reporting out that people are indeed seeing the documentary and learning about the process of reducing taxes here in the state of Missouri. And kind of getting it gives you a view of what exactly goes into that kind of a process and what benefit Missourians will experience through that. So it was really fun to participate, and it's super fun to hear people kind of saying, hey, I saw that, I saw it. So that's awesome. It's running all over the state of Missouri on every channel, various times. You have to go to Missouri Best in the Midwest, or actually Missouri Best Midwest, MissouriBestMidwest.com, and you can watch the documentary there, or you can find out where it's playing on a television near you. So right now I want to get into our encouragement. So you're tuned in, you're listening, you're sitting there, you may be driving in your car or you're at work someplace, wherever you are. And I have a message for you. You were created for a purpose. So people say things about, like, if you're in the public eye, people will say you're special or, something like that. Not really. No, I don't accept that at all. That's why I don't say, fans and all that stuff. That's not where I'm coming from. That's not where I'm dealing from. I feel like we all have a purpose. God has said we all have a purpose. We're all called for such a time as this, and we all have a role to play in spreading the gospel and bringing people to Jesus Christ. And so whatever your ministry area is, it's where you work, it's where you go to school, it's where you live, it's where you maybe pick up your kids from school, or maybe the kids' school where you volunteer, wherever that is where you're interfacing with people, that's your ministry area. And you're called for a purpose, something that has to be done, that is, you're uniquely gifted to do it and has to be done, and you're the one who's supposed to be doing it. So you don't have to be special, quote unquote. Now, I do have that same feeling about there's certain people that when I watch them work or when I hear them speak and see the results that they're getting, that God is moving so mightily in them and doing so much through them that I feel like, my little analogy is I always say there's sparks flying off of them because they're working that hard. But there's also this sense that they know what they're supposed to do and they're doing it, and they're doing it with purpose. They're driving towards something. And it's so energizing and electrifying to be around people who are like that, people who know what they're supposed to do and they feel confident in it. And it's more about just getting up and doing that thing every day, as opposed to doing it some days, not doing it other days, or the feeling that they get from it. Because you honestly, how can you know what feeling they're getting from it? So the scriptures that I have here for you is Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So he calls each and every one of us to a purpose. And the question is, will you answer? Will you answer and say, yep, I see that purpose and I'm going to walk in it? Sometimes the purpose means you're going to be in places where your purpose is going to make other people uncomfortable, or they're going to be uncomfortable with what you're saying, the truth that you're speaking, or the fact that you're sharing the gospel. That's not meant to stop you or to slow you down. That's just a fact of the way the world works. That's the way life is. You're always going to find some naysayers and people who are not happy with what you're doing, or they don't like the way you're doing it, or they want to add 20 cents in and kind of have a say in what's going on. And everyone has their opinion. Everyone has their right to share and express. But when you're walking in God's purpose, that sharing and that expression, if it's godly and timely and meant to encourage you and to keep you on the right path, hey, more power to it. But if it's just there because other people have their opinions, that's not meant to slow you down or to change what you're doing. The other verse that I have for you is Ephesians 1:11. In him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. So that's God. And when he's working things out for our good, he works things out for our good in conformity with his will. And it's pretty amazing if you think about that. The same will that spoke the universe into existence, that is responsible for everything that we see and touch and hear and breathe and smell, that same being works things out. He chooses us in him. He predestines us for a purpose. He works the plan out in conformity with his own will. And so even when we stray, even when we step outside of what would be, like if you think about it, what would God have me do here? And then we choose the opposite. God still accomplishes his purposes in that. His will be done. His will be accomplished. So I want to encourage you that you were created for a purpose. You are an arrow. You have been loosed. You're speeding towards the mark. The mark is the high calling of Christ Jesus, our Lord and Savior. And there's someone's, more than one, who need to hear that truth from you, the gospel, that you would share it with them in your own way. Don't worry about being eloquent or a professional speaker. Don't worry about your comfort or ease with it. Share and let the Holy Spirit do the rest of the work. You're not responsible for drawing people to Jesus Christ. People can only come to the Father if they are drawn by him. But it is your responsibility to share, to disciple others. Once you know someone is a believer and they're young, you're bringing them along. You're encouraging them to come to church. You're inviting them to a Bible study. You're saying, hey, let's pray together. Oh, I noticed that you posted on Facebook that you have so-and-so. Let's pray about that. Here's some scripture to encourage you in that. Then that's your role in that. And there's so many people in your world that you're interacting with. It might be a little bit of prayer for this one. It might be that you're just interceding on someone's behalf quietly behind the scenes for someone else. And it might be open discipleship with yet another person. But what I'm saying is, I hear sometimes people will say, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Well, that's not an unknown feeling for us, but ask God. Say, Lord, what am I to do? What would you have me to do? We know that he will answer those prayers. Not only do we know that, we have comfort in knowing that because he's real. He does not, he's not like a statue that can't answer. He's intimately involved in every aspect of our lives, from the smallest tiny things that are annoyances to us, but they mean a lot to him because they concern us, to those huge overarching issues, your health, your finances, relationships. He's in the mix there too. Rely on him and know that you're called for a purpose and that you have something unique that you're gifted to do, and God wants you to do it. And when you do, others will be blessed by it. I think of some women who they just run organizations at the school. And on the surface, it looks like it's not that big of a deal, but the blessing that they're able to direct into the lives of the people who participate in those activities is untold. The magnitude of what the people who participate experience because of these humble servants who say, I'm spending my time doing this. I'm devoting myself to this. I'll be there whether one person comes or 100 come. I will be there. And when I'm there, I will bless the women who are there with me, or the men who are participating in this, or the parents or the students or what have you. And that is a person or persons who are walking in their purpose. And that obedience, it brings many, many blessings, but it also is encouraging to other people who see it. It spurs us on. So we know I got to stay in my purpose. I got to stay in what God has for me and accomplish that goal. So you were created for a purpose. Don't forget it. All right. That was the encouragement for today. So yesterday I mentioned that, and this is not meant to spark an argument for those of you who are easily triggered by information. Not trying to spark an argument with you about the appropriateness of the use of cannabis. Everybody knows where I stand on that. This is some medical information from a study, and I actually am kind of surprised to see this because it didn't occur to me that this could be the case, but cannabis users needed up to twice the sedation for medical procedures, and this is information that they discovered when they started to study the effect of anesthesia on people who use cannabis. And the reason they're able to do a study like that now, more widespread, is because cannabis is legal in a number of states, and the use of it has become more widespread and mainstream. And so what they did was they looked at 250 patients who required endoscopic procedures in Grand Junction, Colorado, what happened with them and their need of anesthesia. Now, we all know people, I know I do, who they get put down and in the middle of a root canal, they just wake up, so they're not all the way down because you're not supposed to wake up until it's over. Or a person who wakes up in the middle of a surgery. This happens because the anesthesia, maybe the amount that was administered, just wasn't enough for that person. But imagine if you have to pump in 14% more fentanyl, or 20% more midazolam, or 220% more propofol. These are the standard anesthesia drugs that are used to put people under for surgeries. The study says with continued increase in legalization and use of cannabis, the field of anesthesia and sedation needs further studies with greater depth. And this was published Monday in the Journal of American Osteopathic Association. This is important, something to think about, especially if you're using cannabis recreationally. You got to let your doctor know that so they know how to sedate you if you have to go under for surgery. All right, when we get back, we'll have Kurt Schlichter. Stay right there from our Stacy on the Right.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, we took the spices that we'd prepared and we went into the tomb. We found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When we went in, we didn't find the body of our Lord Jesus. Who took him? Where is he? Who took him?
Why do you look for the living among the dead?
Where's Jesus?
He's not here. He has risen.
Jesus was alive. He's alive.
Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, mocked, beaten, and then crucified on a cross for sinners like you and me. The Son of God was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from that grave. American Family Radio encourages you to rejoice in the glorious reality that our God is a living God.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. When I was growing up, our family attended a church where the children sat there with the adults in the morning worship service. I can recall on more than one occasion as a little guy sitting there bored to tears, squirming around, wondering when this was going to be over. I always got excited, though, when the preacher would finally tell everybody to stand up and receive the benediction. I didn't know what the benediction was, but I knew that that was the signal that the service was over and we could get out of there. Well, what is a benediction? Is it just a conclusion of the service to say, hey, it's over now, see you later, go to the restaurant, go home, go watch the game, whatever it is you're going to do, this is it? No. Listen to this solemn benediction from Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. Thus you shall bless the sons of Israel. You shall say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. So they shall invoke my name on the sons of Israel, and then I will bless them. Right here in this text, we see that God's benediction is a plea, first of all, for happiness and protection. Number 2, a benediction is a plea for glory and grace. Then number 3, favor and peace, that God will go with you and cause you to prosper and that you'll experience his peace. Here's what I want you to remember today. The next time you hear the benediction, perk up. Not because the service is over and it's time to eat, but because God has a very special blessing he wants to send with you as you go.
More information.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have a little bit of call screener software issue going on here because I don't see anything on there. So I'm not sure if we have our guest ready or not. I want to also, okay, still working on getting a guest, so no worries there. We're going to have Kurt Schlichter with us in just a little bit. I did mention while we were kind of going over everything yesterday that the court allowed the return of asylum seekers to Mexico, but the second part of that is that Attorney General Barr overruled the court decision making asylum seekers eligible for release on bond. Now, this is, again, it's chess, not checkers. It's, you have to get the rules and the laws, all of them, you have to get them all out and comb over them with a fine-tooth comb and find ways to subvert this activist judicial system that currently works against the interests of American citizens, which is funny that I can say that now I have even more authority to be able to say that because liberals are so angry. They even threatened, Governor Cuomo threatened to sue. No, I'm sorry, not Governor Cuomo. The mayor of New York City, de Blasio. De Blasio threatened to sue if President Trump goes forward with dumping illegal aliens in sanctuary cities. So you know what they could do? Instead of wasting millions of dollars filing lawsuits against the president and the Attorney General of the United States and the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary of DHS, they could simply remove the sanctuary city status. If you said, you know what, he can't dump people here, we're not going to be a sanctuary city. That would suddenly mean you're no longer on the list where people are going to get dropped off. Right? Yeah, a little bit of logic there. It's so logical it hurts. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome good friend of the show and author. He was a colonel, lieutenant colonel, I think, in the Army National Guard. He's kind of scary in a uniform, but that's in a good way. Scary good, not scary bad. Kurt Schlichter, thanks for joining the show today.
Hi, how are you? And it's full colonel, damn it.
Yeah, okay, full colonel. Sorry about that. You know what? I actually thought I said full colonel, then I said lieutenant colonel. You know what? You're one of those ones.
I had more fun as a lieutenant colonel.
You what? You were?
I had more fun as a lieutenant colonel.
Of course you did. But I think it's pretty awesome that you did that. And while you were doing that, you were also practicing the law. Because what I've heard is you'll cut somebody in the courtroom is what I've heard. That you actually are.
Yeah. I will take them down.
I love it. So it's always good to have friends who not only served in the military and are scary in a uniform, but also can tear you up in a courtroom. It's good to have friends like that, right?
Well, I try to make a difference, usually for the worst.
All right, so speaking of making a difference for the worst, I wanted your take on two things. First of all, Mueller report, redacted though it may be, is incoming less than 24 hours. What are you expecting here, Kurt?
I'm not expecting that much. I think Attorney General Barr probably characterized it pretty accurately. I think he'd be a fool not to have, and it doesn't seem like he's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
But, I think they'll make a giant thing of it. Some of the stuff has to be redacted because of classified material. Some of it has to be redacted because it's grand jury stuff. Some of it has to be redacted because there are third parties' privacy involved. I mean, when you're investigating someone, you don't want to put out, all their findings if they're not going to be indicted. And they will say, aha, look what's gone. Look what's not there. Look what's been cut out. The truth's in there somewhere.
All right. So you kind of are in the same vein as me. I think it's going to be Nothing Burger Part 2. And the reason I say that, I'll just give my little reasoning, and it's pretty simple. There is no there there. The president has maintained his innocence on the charge of collusion and obstruction of justice from day one. There really was no legitimate proof or anything other than the dossier, which was a baked up piece of nothing. And so here we are, 2 years later, multiple tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money wasted, and the Democrats are really disappointed, as they should be. But instead of embarrassment, we're seeing them doubling down like there's going to be something amazing tomorrow, and there isn't.
They're super sad that the president isn't Trump. The president isn't Vladimir Putin's puppet. They're upset about that, which I find kind of remarkable. They should be, okay, well, all right, great. Our president is not a giant treason traitor of treachery.
Yeah.
But no, they're sad.
Doesn't that seem
I'll
like
tell
something?
you about what they're really after.
What do they want?
They want their power back, the power that the American people took from them because they were using it poorly, because they were using it for their own benefit, because they weren't taking care of normal Americans, because they didn't care about anybody who didn't live within 20 miles of a college or 20 miles of a coast.
So what is the, and I know some of the answer, but I think when listeners are listening to us discuss this, one of the reactions that I feel like people are having, because it's my reaction too, is when do they get held accountable for this? Other than the fact that CNN's ratings are completely obliterated, people are punishing them by not watching them. Other than that, what other, do you think this is going to carry into 2020 with the presidential election and of course, down ballot races?
I think I think about normal people who kind of expected our ruling class to behave in a decent and non-self-interested way, have gotten awakened by what's happening, and the people who are in charge have really shown themselves to be incompetent and greedy and not particularly bright. It's I think they have done tremendous damage to their own credibility. I'm hoping that doesn't rub off on people's respect for the Constitution, simply because a bunch of people in power abused it. But it is going to be an issue in 2020. I don't think it'll be a direct issue, but I think it'll always be in the background. Hey, remember, these are the same guys who chased their tail for 2 years talking about Trump treason, collusion, and there was nothing there, and now they want us to trust them with power again, and maybe that's not a great idea. So I think it's going to hurt them.
I do too. I don't know how tangible it's going to be, because they kind of drug it out, and they really had the best timing, because had this same revelation happened in October of November last year, Republicans would have held the House. I sincerely believe that. But I think there is going to be some backlash in 2020. It's just going to be difficult to measure how much of it comes from their lying about the Mueller investigation. So let's pivot over to immigration. You've seen some pretty fantastic moves by the president over the last couple of days. He basically called their bluff and said, if you love sanctuary city status so much, you're going to take all of the illegal aliens who are coming and applying for asylum, the ones we have to release into the country, we're going to ship them directly to you. And I've never heard the liberals wail so loudly. What else do you think the
pretty
president will
hilarious.
do? Yeah.
The whole thing is like most of the things they say, a lie and a scam. They want to virtue signal, and they want to put the costs on people who don't live within 20 miles of the coast, don't live within 20 miles of a college. You know, I live on the beach in Los Angeles. Do you think there are a lot of illegal aliens in my neighborhood? There are not. The liberals who surround me, heck, I'm in Ted Lieu's district, would not tolerate it. But everybody else has to live with the problems created by uncontrolled illegal immigration, including crime, problems with social services, and just kind of the disruption that comes along with bringing in people who are not, in many cases, not interested in assimilating. They're here to work for a while and then leave, many of them. So they have no investment in our communities. And it's really easy to say, illegal immigrants are wonderful. Let's embrace them. But when you actually have to embrace them, like Cher tweeted. Cher had previously tweeted, "They're welcome in my house," and then suddenly the president says, "Well, okay, I'm sending them over." She said, "Oh, no, you can't do that." It was always a lie and a scam, and it's always nice. That's the incredible thing about Donald Trump. Of all the people on earth, it's Donald Trump who forces people to reveal themselves as to what they really are. And they're hypocrites.
So let's talk about the next development, which is AG Barr overruling the court decision making asylum seekers eligible for release on bond. I think this is brilliant. I'm wondering what took them so long. Maybe it's because they just now have AG Barr unleashed and able to do anything. What exactly happens next now that they can't just bond them out and let them go anywhere they want?
I think we're going to have a lot of them. I think people will stop being incentivized to come over the border when they realize, no, you don't get a free pass into the USA where you can go and disappear. Unfortunately, they will drag their children along because if you have children, you don't get to be held for more than 20 days, which I think is ridiculous. I think they should hold everybody. Actually, I think they should stop. What happens? They get an initial screening. Do you have a credible fear of prosecution? They all repeat the same words, and it's all a lie.
Yeah, they read it from a piece of paper, right? Because that was what the part that shocked me.
Exactly. Yeah. And we should stop. It destroys respect, among other problems, or it destroys respect for law when everybody knows there's a scam going on, when there's a grift happening, when we're being conned, which is what this is. And we should stop pretending, and we should say, nah, you came up here from Honduras, and you don't have a credible fear of persecution. I'm taking you to the border, and I'm throwing you across. And I think we need to do that.
So, well, you're right. It's not applying to families. Flores' decision still applies there. But anyone who passes the border and basically crosses illegally, who applies and uses the credible fear thing, will be transferred to a full deportation hearing, and they will be ineligible for release on bond. And this takes effect in 90 days. Yeah, I like it, but I wish it applied to everybody. Like, I'm trying to figure out how we could do that.
I do too. And the other thing I would do is I would refuse to accept asylum application from anybody who didn't appear at a consulate or at a border station. This nonsense about dragging kids through the desert, and then when you're caught 20 miles inland in mid-Arizona saying, oh, well, we're seeking asylum. They're killing kids. They're hurting kids. And liberals are willing to tolerate it, but I'm sick of this collateral damage.
I am too. I mean, it's really sad. It's one of the saddest things we ever have to deal with when you think about it. It's knowing that kids are being abused, sexually trafficked. Some of them are abandoned once the adults get across because they're not related to them, so they don't have any reason to take care of them once they get in the country. And this is happening to kids because we have laws that don't make sense.
Well, and everybody knows they don't make sense. And the fact is the Democrats want to replace American citizens with pliable foreigners. They're hoping that these illegals will come in and vote Democrat. And, it's funny. You remember that old Ted Cruz ad where they where it showed, a bunch of lawyers and movie producers coming over the border. And if it was lawyers and movie producers coming over the border, well, you would see those Democrats being immigration hawks overnight. They don't pay the price for what they invite. And that goes back to the genius of, well, I'm sending them to the sanctuary cities. Yes, the people who do something should pay the costs for it.
So when you talk about paying the cost, that actually would negatively impact you, Kurt Schlichter, because you, as you said, you live in Ted Lieu's district. You live in a sanctuary state, in a sanctuary city, sanctuary state, sanctuary county. You're surrounded. I've never seen people reverse course so quickly, though. I know, because I talked about this on the show a couple of times, I've brought this up, but I'm still surprised, and I'm hard to shock. I'm shocked and surprised by how quickly Democrats were using words like pestilence and, rapists, criminals, the kinds of characterizations that they said made Donald Trump a racist. They went straight to those and started using them with impunity about the same group of people that they just a few days ago said needed to be here.
Well, among illegal aliens, there are criminals, rapists, drug dealers, murderers. There are also people who just want a job. We should be honest about what there is, and that's the problem with the Democrats. They haven't been honest. They refuse to recognize the costs imposed on other people because, again, until now it's never been their neighborhood. And that's what that was Donald Trump's sin. He said, "Wait a minute, all illegal aliens are not okay," and that's just a fact. No group of any human beings is all okay. But, again, as liberals wish to do, they lie and they attempt to silence debate. And the great thing about Donald Trump is he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He's going to say it anyway. You can't say any illegal alien's ever been a criminal. Yeah, some are criminals. What?
So, Kurt, what happens now? Do you see him making good on the threat? Because I think the only way this works is if they actually have to experience it. If some of the illegal aliens who have to be released, the family units, the ones that we can't do anything about, if some of them are shipped to San Francisco and New York and places like that, Vermont, unless they're shipped there, really this was an exercise in futility because the reversal of the sanctuary city status would be the most logical way to stop President Trump from doing this. Is just no longer being a sanctuary
they'll never
city.
do that. They'll just complain about having to actually put their money where their mouth is. I don't know if Donald Trump's going to do it. I hope he does. I'm sure some Hawaiian judge will issue an injunction because, finding a constitutional right for people who shouldn't be in the country to be wherever they want inside the country. But, I think slowly but surely he's going to make progress. He's going to put more military down the border. He's slowly building the wall. He's slowly changing the administrative stuff like AG Barr did. He's not a dictator. He can't do things overnight. He can't change the law overnight. And he's got a lot of judges to fight. But slowly but surely, if you keep pushing, the situation's unsustainable, meaning it won't be sustained. He's going to win in the long run. I think we just have to, as much as it annoys me, be patient.
Well, we will. Well, because we have no other choice. Kurt Schlichter, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure, we'll talk again soon. We'll be back with more Stacy on the Right after this. Stay there.
What or who motivates you to live and do life? Whether it's the motivation of your business or being healthy and fit, many times the why behind many individuals' determination is because of their children or grandchildren or even a spouse. Their primary why is because of a fallible being instead of Jesus. I know you're probably saying victory. I'm sure Jesus is a reason too, but Jesus should be the only reason for our whys in life. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 10, starting at verse 37, if you love your father, mother, son, or daughter more than him, then you are not worthy of being his. But if we give up our life for him, we will find life in him. It is only because of him we can do the things he has enabled us to do. Have your why be because of the sacrifice Jesus made on the cross for you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory Hollyfield. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
Life is never picture perfect. Human beings come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and abilities. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we think we're prepared, the unplanned happens all the time. It's how we respond to the unexpected that shows our true humanity. But many do not see the value of every human life. Too many are willing to discard those who don't fit the picture of perfection. Abortion destroys the chance to love and to be loved. We never know what will fill the frames of our lives, or how empty those frames can be when we allow exceptions.
Every life is a gift.
Learn more at www.radiance.life.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Infanticide after hearing the comments from the governor of New York signing a bill and the governor of Virginia. But they stayed silent. Later today, they will leave and go on their retreat. They have many speakers. They've invited celebrities not to perform, but to tell them what the values of hardworking Americans are. I have one question for the Democrats after 100 days. What have you accomplished? Name me one problem you have solved, because the direction of the new radical, resistance, and resolutions is not the direction America wants. America deserves better. If you look at this first 100 days, it's been 100 days of failure under Speaker Pelosi. Failure to address the real problems that the American people elected all of us to confront. Failure to do one of the most basic things, failure to do a budget. The law actually says that Congress has to pass a budget by April 15th. As families all across the country are working on their taxes, many of them actually seeing more money in their paychecks because of the work that we did to cut taxes.
And that's just some truth telling that we're having to listen to there. I honestly, I love the fact that they're pointing that out, the House Republicans, and they held this, really, it was tongue in cheek, and it was crushing for the Democrats in some ways, this 100 days of Democrat disappointment press conference. But the Democrats aren't really interested in passing laws or legislation or making changes in the lives of Americans. They're just interested in running and getting more power. So, whatever. Welcome back to the program. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Let's go to the phones. We have Mike in Kansas. Hey, Mike, thanks for calling the show. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling the show.
Hello?
Hi there. What's your comment?
On the tragic death of James Charles. He had 18 dildos shoved up his ass, and he died.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it looks like we've still got more trolls calling into the show. Good news, I guess, is that means a lot of people are tuning in. I don't know. Please forgive the fact that person got through the call screening process. So what we're going to do is take a break from the calls and get back to the show. So President Trump is sending thousands of troops to the U.S. border. The new report out today suggests that President Trump he's going to be sending as many as 10,000 troops to the border over the next few months. It could be closer to 3,000 troops. Either way, it looks like the president is trying to get some military help. And I'm excited about this because it signals a change in direction. He's no longer only waiting on legislation to help with the problem. He's going to use U.S. Army North, which is the unit that's currently overseeing the border mission. And they've actually drafted deployment orders in anticipation of a new request from Homeland Security to aid U.S. Customs and Border Protection in the ongoing joint agency border mission. Now, 4 Defense Department sources told Newsweek that the document appears to show between 9,000 and 10,000 more U.S. forces headed to the southwest border in the next few months. However, the Pentagon said on Tuesday the document is misleading, as not every individual service member in a unit selected to deploy will go. Now, we've talked about this before. We do not have, they don't say to a specific unit, we're deploying you to this place, like the southern border, and then every person in the unit goes, because not every person would be suitable to serve at the southern border. So they will only pick people that are in the MOSs, or, basically their job descriptions match up with something that can be used down there, or their combat roles match up with something that can be used down at the southern border. And that's everywhere they do a deployment. Often they'll fix it so that it's a rolling deployment, so everyone has a chance to go, but not everyone is deployed at the same time, because whatever their mission is at their home base still has to be accomplished, even though they're deploying people. So they'll pull, a certain number of individuals from each unit and deploy them, and they'll be there for 12 months, 18 months, 6 months, whatever the deployment length is. And then they'll rotate back home, and new ones will rotate in. And they'll be rotating in from different units across the country. Sometimes units that are deployed abroad that have ended their mission, when they return after a suitable period of time, they'll be mixed in as well. So this is the urgency that we're seeing from the president to address the crisis at the southern border. That is exactly what we're seeing here. It's the execution of that. 4 Defense Department sources told Newsweek that the document appears to show between 9,000 and 10,000 more U.S. forces headed over to the southwest border. But the Pentagon is going to, kind of keep tabs on that. Like Newsweek and other places that are reporting on this will have to kind of go back to them to get updates. Now, U.S. military planners are anticipating sending a brigade minus, or about 3,000 additional U.S. forces to join units already at the border. But the Pentagon emailed Newsweek, a reporter at Newsweek, on Tuesday, saying the number's not 3,000, and the draft copy was the information that they received. So it's definitely not 3,000, and that it's a much smaller number, between 300 and 500. So in my mind, all this points out is, first of all, they're speculating. They don't know exactly how many people are going to be deployed. That's number one. And number two, the military is never going to tell them exactly how many people are being deployed. They keep those kinds of numbers close to the vest because they don't want there to be basically knowledge out there, and insinuation that by moving that number of troops from this location to that, you're leaving a huge hole over here. So the best way to counteract that kind of thinking is to not permit anyone to move, to have accurate numbers of who's being moved. So the numbers are not accurate. And that's perfectly fine. Like, I think best things to do is just wait and see what happens. Whether they're moving 300 to 500 or they're moving 3,000 to 5,000, whatever the case is, I think the president has a good grip on what he's trying to do. The strategy is clearly changing, and I can't wait to see what else unfolds. So I want to get a couple more things out, news story-wise. And one of them is that, so if you're not aware, Morehouse College is a historically black college and university, an HBCU. It's the only all-male black college in the entire country. And they previous till just recently, they were known for turning out high quality graduates who went on to become very successful and very philanthropically minded, who then would go back and they would be, upper class guys who are working these wonderful jobs, married with families, but they would also be reaching back into their community where they grew up or where they came from, or a disadvantaged community near where they lived, and they would start organizations for mentoring and things like that. Well, now you've got them saying that if a woman is transgendered, not that she's had the surgery already, but that she's just transgendered, if she is, she's actually going to be sent through and she can attend Morehouse. And I say she because if a person is living as a man, at the DNA level, they're still a man, or they're still a woman. If you're a woman and you're living as a man, you're still a woman. If you're a man and you're living as a woman, you're still a man at the DNA level. And if you haven't even had any of the surgeries, you're just playing dress up. So they're going to obliterate this tradition. I think it's 100 years plus, or something close to that, of Morehouse being an all-male college. Now they're going to let women in there. I mean, sometimes you just think to yourself, what else can they destroy? And they're like, hold my beer. I got other stuff I can destroy. We'll do it. So there's that story. And it's kind of depressing, but, prayers up for that. Just pray and go on the best that we can. The other story that I thought was I even mentioned it during the interview with Kurt Schlichter. It's such comeuppance. CNN loses nearly 50% of their primetime audience, and MSNBC is down nearly 30%. Now, in my mind, this is not just the loss of the audience, but think about the advertisers who currently pay premiums to have their content, interspersed in these programs. And if you think about it, isn't turnabout fair play? Doesn't God say, vengeance is mine, I will repay? They did all of those campaigns against Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and others, and other radio hosts. And they took away the advertisers. And then they were saying, we're going to drive you off the air. Well, those people are still on the air. They might have reduced advertising, but they're still on the air. Meanwhile, CNN, they have to be having some pretty tough conversations. Can you imagine those meetings? They have to be brutal. People sitting around talking about who's all going to be cut, or pay cuts, or airtime cuts. The contributors, the contributors, that's extra gravy. The extra money they have, they spend on those because they're talking heads that they can rely on and tap to come on 4 and 5 and 10 times in 1 week. And it's fun, and the contributor pay is awesome, but they have a huge stable of those guys. They're gonna have to cut something. So here's the numbers. Compared to this same week last year, CNN has lost a jaw-dropping 47% of their primetime audience and 40% of their total day viewers. TV News reports that this is CNN's worst week in primetime all year. MSNBC did not fare all that much better. During prime time, the left-wing outlet lost 28% of their viewers. Throughout the total day, MSNBC was down 20%. For those who believe this ratings drop has nothing to do with MSNBC and CNN being exposed after 2 years of deliberately lying and publishing a hoax about President Trump, look at Fox News. Fox has lost 8% of their primetime viewers and 12% of total day viewers. So, comparatively speaking, a drop in the bucket. They've still lost some, but I think it's also because people who were just waiting on the Mueller report, just waiting on either vindication or conviction, the reason they were watching has now evaporated. And so they've gone back to their regular lives. But 12%, that's something that you kind of look at and you say, okay, well, we can win them back when heavy news cycles appear. Like when there's heavy news, those people will come back to like, what's going on? Let me watch these shows. But 47%, that means people are angry. They feel like they've been hoodwinked. They don't like what they heard. They don't like the fact that they were told one thing and it turned out to be another. So, I don't know. Both of the outlets spent 2 years lying to the American people. And that's not all of the bad news. the advertisers covet the age demo of 25 to 54. CNN lost 52% of total day viewers, and even more incredibly, 58% of their primetime viewers in that coveted age bracket of 25 to 54. MSNBC lost 43% of their total day 25 to 54 viewers and 48% of their primetime 25 to 54. I said 28. 25 to 54 viewers. So people between the ages of 25 and 54 are the most coveted age group of viewers, and these two networks are just dropping those literally by the ton. So Fox News was number one in all of cable with 2.43 million prime time viewers, and MSNBC was a distant second with 1.6 million, and CNN dropped to a humiliating 15th place. They had 690,000 average primetime viewers. We are now looking at them like they're, well, that's not CNN. It's not the CNN of James Earl Jones, is it? So Fox News has always had a bigger audience, but they've been able to hold on to almost all of theirs post-Mueller report because they didn't spend 2 years conning the audience into thinking that the president was a Russian spy and that there was going to be impeachment. Now, I know there are some other issues, and I've seen people in the comments talking about how they don't like this and that about Fox, and I always feel comfortable calling Shep Smith on the carpet because he does tend to be really far outside of what mainstream Fox News viewers like to see and hear on that network. But that being said, everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows what his ideals are. People know why he's there, fair and balanced. So he's on the other side, completely other side. But to see that kind of drop, 15 down to 15th place. I mean, do y'all can you just for a second just stop and think about back when Lynn Vaughn and Bobby Batista were the two anchors of CNN, and they would bring us reporting from the Middle East and Bosnia, what it was then, the Yugoslavia, all these parts of the world that Americans would never get to. They would bring live reports. The reporters would be on the ground, and they would be talking to Lynn Vaughn and Bobby Batista whenever they were on. And it was real news. It was breaking international news. How far they have fallen. And I say that not gleefully. I mean, it is nice to see them get some comeuppance, but I long for the days when CNN would return to that kind of hard-hitting news organization that cared nothing about the politics or ideological bent and went for the news, went for the stories, the reporting, breaking real news. They haven't broken any real news in probably 15 years. Pretty amazing. More people are watching the Disney Channel. All right. That's hour one of the program. Thank you so much for being with us. If you're leaving us now, God bless from the Heartland. If you're sticking around, onenewsnow.com. News and information is up next. It's coming at you. Stay there.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. An 18-year-old woman who made threats against Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, is now dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Frank DeAngelis is the former principal of Columbine. He was in charge during the horrific 1999 Columbine shooting, and he says today's events bring back lots of difficult memories.
This takes us back, and I think you talk to most people that were part of Columbine High School. When that month of April comes, it does something to us all.
Sol Pais was found dead today in Mount Evans, Colorado. Investigators say Pais was obsessed with the Columbine shooting, which left 13 people dead. Authorities add she bought a shotgun and traveled to Colorado just days before the 20th anniversary of the school shooting. Denver area schools closed down today as authorities searched for Pais. School Superintendent Jason Glass says this week was a difficult one.
While Jeffco was the epicenter of this threat, it extended across the whole metro area and affected us all.
Meanwhile, neighbors in Sol Pais' hometown of Surfside, Florida, say they're shocked.
Like every story like that, you never know. That stuff doesn't happen to me, it happens somewhere else. But the girl's quiet, keeps herself.
Recapping our top story now, an 18-year-old woman who police say made threats against Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, is now dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. More on this story at OneNewsNow.com. Former First Lady Michelle Obama is being criticized for comparing the Trump presidency to being raised by a divorced dad.
We come from a broken family. We're a teenager where, we're a little unsettled and, having good parents, is tough. Sometimes you spend weekends with divorced dad, and that feels like it's fun, but then you get sick. That's what America's going through. We're kind of living with divorced dad.
Well, many on social media calling her comment sexist and unfair to divorced dads. One father saying on Twitter, "As a divorced dad, I do my best to raise my son into the kind of man of which we all can be proud." The First Lady made the comment during a book tour stop in London.
Carly Shimkus reporting. The Trump administration is paving the way to allow lawsuits against firms linked to properties in Cuba. Rachel Sutherland reports.
There could be 6,000 claims for property seized in the Cuban Revolution with a value of $8 billion with interest. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said it's time to hold the Cuban regime accountable.
We're helping those whom the regime has robbed get compensation for their rightful property. And we're advancing human rights and democracy on behalf of the Cuban people.
There will be no exemptions to the policy, which means businesses in Canada, Europe, and here in America could be targeted if they're operating out of confiscated properties. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
China has become an extremely bad actor when it comes to religious freedom, and in particular, they've been cracking down on a religious minority known as the Uyghur Muslims. Talking about this on Washington Watch with Tony Perkins, U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, said it's all about control.
And desire for complete control and fear of any faith community group that might be something that people could rally or organize around that could challenge them. I said in a speech in Hong Kong that China, it seems, is at war with faith, but it is a war they will not win. They're going at the Uyghurs, they're going at the house church members, they're going at Tibetan Buddhists, they're going at Falun Gong. It's really kind of seems to be almost any and all religious groups, and it seems to be around their concern for control.
One way that China is tracking the Uyghur Muslims involves artificial intelligence and facial recognition cameras. In final news this hour, there will be an international architects competition to redesign Notre Dame Cathedral's spire after it came down in Monday's fire. Authorities still say that renovation work may have led to the fire. Find more news at OneNewsNow.com.
One goal is that we're hoping that believers will come to learn more about prayer and more about the vital place it's to have in the life of every single believer.
Pastor Joseph Parker of the Hour of Intercession.
Each and every one of us is called to live a life given to prayer. All of us are wise to make prayer a big part of our individual lives, and we're wise to make it a big part of our life in our families and in our homes.
Listen weekday afternoons at 1 Central here on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
What magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more than economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there, welcome back to the program. Thanks for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We are so excited to be with you, and we have Jonathan Wood. He's a frequent guest on the program. He's actually an attorney for the Pacific Legal Foundation, and he has some updates on that Congressional Review Act legislation that was, there's lawsuits, there's a whole bunch of stuff flying around. He's going to update us on that. And I'm actually gleefully excited about sharing with you this, it's a bit of news about President Trump's tax law. So Bernie Sanders, as we all are just finding out and beginning to know and accept, and just that information is being received, that he is a millionaire, he's rich, he's a 1%er. His book sales have propelled him into a new realm of wealth and prosperity. And we are happy for him because we are capitalists, and we just want to hear him say that he's no longer a socialist. That's really all I want to hear him say. I want to hear him just admit that capitalism works, and that he has almost no accomplishments in the, when he was in the private sector, he wrote horrible essays about rape and everything else. He was just a loser. And then he decided to become an elected official. And upon doing that, he found some success. Mind you, success being, depends on what your definition of success is. Bernie Sanders doesn't have any signature legislation under his belt. He's never championed an idea and had it just become mainstream enough to become legislation. But somewhere along the line, in conjunction with the Democrats' takeover of K through 12 education and then the higher education, enough Americans have become really enamored of this idea that we should be socialists, that his book, he's written, I think, 3 books, they've propelled him to this kind of economic success. And that's how America works. If you write a book that's garbage, trash, and enough people love it, then you're going to reap the benefits of book sales. It's irrelevant what your ideology is. It's if you can get enough social buzz going around you to make it possible for enough people to say, I'm buying that book because it's the book you want to have on your little IKEA $60 coffee table in your, walk-up apartment. If enough people do that, then so be it. There it is. And then royalties become millions, and one house becomes 2, and you get a boat, and, But when is he going to admit that that's what's happened to him, and consequently he's no longer a socialist because he hasn't redistributed any of that money? But just so you know. So here's the story. You've got the Trump tax law, which reduced taxes for lots and lots and lots of people, especially small business owners, people like that, which I think is wonderful. And I've been talking about how excited I was for these changes from the moment that the Tax Cuts and Reinvestment, or Jobs Tax Cuts and Reinvestment Act, was proposed. And I hoped that the president would make good on his promise to cut taxes for everyone. Well, not only did he do that, but he has made it possible for people like Bernie Sanders to receive the benefits of this legislation as well. And you know what's super important about it? That no matter what your ideology is, you can still experience the tax cuts. That's the beauty of the free market system and, tax cuts that are done by Republicans. We can all benefit from it, whether or not you support the president, whether you voted for him or not, whether you think he's awesome. So it's 2 things. First off, did you know that Bernie Sanders has a son who's actually older than Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke? Yeah. Just to give you some benchmarks by which to judge old Bernie bros, Bernie Sanders and his bros. So here's the information about his taxes. He's released his taxes because he's running for president, and it appears that he saved roughly $38,000 thanks to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which cut most Americans' taxes. He's released 10 years worth of tax returns as of Monday night. He promised to do that, and he says he collected more than $1 million in 2016 and 2017 from the sales of his books, Our Revolution and Bernie Sanders' Guide to Political Revolution. Now, he's dodged questions about his newfound wealth, et cetera, et cetera. Even at that Fox News town hall that people are kind of angry about, he declined to say if he would pay the top rate of 52%. So the top tax rate is 52%, which he proposed. So that's not in our current tax law, but in his proposal during his 2016 run for the White House, Bernie Sanders proposed that the top tax bracket be 52%. He did not respond to a question from Fox News' Martha McCallum about voluntarily giving money to the government to bring his tax bill up to what he thought the fair rate was. Because if he did so, let's do the simple math here. If he increased his tax rate from where it is now to the 52%, that'd be an increase of almost 30%. And of course, he's not going to do that. And this is what we see every single time. Guess who else is a multimillionaire? Kamala Harris. Guess who else is advocating for higher tax rates? Kamala Harris. They all advocate for gun control. Guess who just admitted she owns a gun? Kamala Harris. These people, I mean, the hypocrisy runs so deep and so strong, they can't even see it. So, of course, you know, the people who love crunching numbers and love tax season have already done an analysis. There's a place called the Tax Foundation. It's a right-leaning think tank. They took Sanders' 2016 proposal when he was running for president for the new tax brackets, which would increase taxes for everyone. And that proposal added 4 new top tax brackets with rates of 37%, 43%, 48%, and 52%. It would also add a 2.2% income-based health care premium paid by households, which would be the equivalent of raising everyone's taxes by 2.2%. In other words, can't pay for his crazy ideas unless everyone pays more in tax, which goes against what they say. They say that poor people shouldn't pay more in tax, only rich people should, but everybody would pay more under his proposals. Using their estimates of Sanders' brackets, as well as the senator's reported 2018 taxable income of $519,529. And let's just put a pin in this for a second. And I don't begrudge anybody their income. But Bernie Sanders is a socialist who earned in America in 2018 over $500,000. Now, he's obviously, his kids are adults. They're elderly adults almost. What does he need with $500,000? And when I say that to you, honestly, what does he need with it? And I don't mean it because I want him to give it to me. No, thank you. Not interested in that. But why would a socialist want to keep that kind of money? It seems like it would be antithetical to his very existence. It would be so repugnant to him to earn that kind of money that he would say, what are our basic needs? And we're giving the rest of this away to poor, to people who are indigent, anyone who is on a social safety network, anything but keeping that money. So if his tax rules were applied, let's say he was the president, and he implemented that tax thing, which immediately, not a good idea, but that's what he was running on. His total tax liability under his own scheme would have been $170,000, over $170,000. If he were paying taxes under his own plan, he'd be shelling out an additional $36,000 plus to the government, and his tax liability would have been 32.7% of his income. So he's saving so much money, just like millions of other Americans, because Donald Trump is the president. Honestly, shouldn't Bernie Sanders have stopped at that town hall and just said, you know what, as a new millionaire, I got to say thank you to Donald Trump for saving me almost $40,000. Well, you know, people who are enemies don't often thank each other, so maybe it's a bit much to expect him to do that, but still. So multiple tax policy think tanks have provided tools to estimate the tax liability with and without the TCJA. And using the information provided in Sanders' 2018 tax return, the calculators indicate that he has received major benefits to his bottom line. Now, these aren't perfect. Like, there are certain things that they assume that may not have been specific to his tax returns. They analyze them, and then they make certain assumptions, and then they apply what he said his tax policy was and compare it to what the current tax policy is. But overall, the idea here is he's saving gobs of money. I mean, raise your hand up. I know for our terrestrial listeners, y'all can't see me, but I got my hand up. I got the hand up with one finger raised, like you do when you're in church and you need to leave the sanctuary. And so you kind of jump up and you crouch down, you put one finger up, and then you scurry out because you don't want to disturb everybody else is in the word. They're listening to the pastor. I had a finger up like that if I'd be happy with saving that kind of money or having it checked from the U.S. Treasury to me for that amount, 40 grand. Yeah, I'd totally be happy with that. And so, not that I'm paying that amount. That's not an admission or anything, but I'm just saying, who around these parts wouldn't be happy with 40 grand? He should be very happy and very grateful that the president implemented a policy that doesn't say everybody but the socialists gets a tax cut. Wouldn't that have been something? So don't forget, last little bit here, don't forget that when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act came up for a vote, Bernie Sanders voted against it. And even though he voted against it, he still gets to reap the benefit of saving nearly 40 grand on his 2018 taxes. In 2019's taxes, next year we're in 2020, Bernie Sanders will be saving the same or more, depending on how much money he makes this year. So over time, until the Democrats can find a way to claw this tax cut back, till the American people go straight nincompoopville and usher in Democratic rule and give them the opportunity to roll all of these wonderful benefits back, Bernie Sanders will save roughly 40 grand a year. So 2 years left, that's 80,000 plus the 40 he already saved. So he's going to save 120,000, basically more than twice the median income for a family of four in the United States. He's going to save twice that number on his taxes thanks to President Trump. Isn't that a bit of irony? I think it is. I actually think that is, it's not just ironic, it's crazy pants. There should be, I don't know how it would work, but just off the top of my head, wouldn't it be an interesting thing if from here on out, whatever tax policy there was, if you vote for it, and it wins, you get it. If you vote against it and it passes, you don't have to go under it. Think about what would happen. The Democrats are passing some huge tax increase and the Republicans vote against it. And everyone who votes against it and so the constituents they represent don't have to go under the new tax plan. The tax increase would go only to the Democrats. Could you see them ever passing another one? They would never pass another tax increase again. And they would vote for every tax cut. Pretty amazing. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Jonathan Wood of the Pacific Legal Foundation. Stay right there. More Stacy on the Right up next.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MetaShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MetaShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
Up next, Carol Swain with 2 minutes to think about it. From poverty to professor, from GED to PhD, a bold Christian speaking truth to power. Here's Carol with today's 2 minutes.
If you're like me, you're fed up with the leftist tactics. We have the Mueller report. The president has been cleared of collusion with Russia to win the 2016 election. You would think that the president's haters who pinned their hopes and desires on his being arrested and walked out of the White House in handcuffs would have gone away quietly. You would be wrong if you expected them to show the decency to do that. No. They are up in arms again with another conspiracy theory. This time, it's about Attorney General Barr. He only released a small summary of the report, as if the average American would want to read the entire 300 pages. The left now argues that the redacted form is hiding something. Really? Peering over the shoulder of the Attorney General through all of this redacting was Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Rod, wire Rosenstein, who's no fan of the president, is not one that would have allowed the president to get away with anything. This 2-year collusion delusion, the flight of fancy of the president's haters and their media buddies, is quickly coming in for a very hard landing.
Learn more about Dr. Carol M. Swain and help support her ongoing work with your tax-deductible donation to Be the People Project at CarolMSwain.com. That's CarolMSwain.com.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. You can find out more about us at stacyontheright.com, afr.net, and urbanfamilytalk.com. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest back to the program. We have Jonathan Wood. He's an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation. Jonathan, thank you for coming back on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's talk about you have follow-up on the Congressional Review Act. I think the last time you came on, that's what we discussed.
That's right. I think last time I was on, we were talking about a decision from a federal court in Idaho saying that people could sue agencies to force them to comply with the Congressional Review Act. For your listeners that don't recall, the Congressional Review Act is one of the most important laws for holding federal agencies accountable. It requires them to submit every rule they want to impose on us to Congress first, so that our elected representatives have a chance to review what agencies are doing. And yet we found that agencies are systematically failing to comply with that law. And this week, or last week, we learned that the government itself is recognizing that problem. An agency called the Office of Management and Budget within the White House issued a memorandum directing agencies that they have not been complying with the law and that they need to start sending every rule they enact to Congress as required.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. But is that actually going to happen?
Well, I think it's certainly in the short term. The fact the administration is coming out and taking this position, that message will filter down to the agency. So I expect we'll see a spike of compliance in the short term. But realistically, the only way this law and other laws designed to hold agencies accountable can work is if the courts take seriously their obligation to enforce the law. If you or I can't go to court and say an agency is unlawfully imposing a rule on us that hasn't been reviewed by Congress, then there's really no reason why, over the long term, agencies should comply with this law. And so that's why it's great and very important that the administration is doing the right thing and trying to get agencies to clean up their act. But frankly, unless Congress and the courts also get involved and take these obligations seriously, there's little reason to think it will last.
So all I want to do is have them accountable for the stuff that they pass, because it seems like they're in a room with a bunch of cats and monkeys and they just think up stupid stuff and they write it down, and then it becomes something that us regular Americans who actually have real jobs and real responsibilities, we have to follow it. And if we complain about it, it's like if I were to walk up to a wooden door and complain. I cannot logically expect a wooden door to respond to my complaints, but that's what they're like. And it's like that with all government officials. When you go to them and you say, you have this rule that says I can't do X, the first thing they say is, well, I don't have anything to do with that rule. I just work here. I don't know what you can do. They point you to a website or a phone number, and then you're just stuck because there's nobody there that can help you either.
That's exactly right. Accountability is absolutely key, and it's something our founding fathers recognized when they wrote the Constitution. The reason why there's no unaccountable agency branch of the government is because they thought that idea was extremely dangerous. They wanted the lawmaking power to stay with Congress, the people we elect to write the laws. And sadly, that's not the government we have today. Almost all laws are written by bureaucrats in agency offices that most of us have never heard of. And there's little Congress does or can do to try to restrain these agencies. Unless laws like the Congressional Review Act are followed and enforced, that situation is going to get worse, not better.
Yeah. So what else can people, like regular people, do? Because oftentimes we'll hear, an interview on a radio show. I know sometimes I do that. I'll be listening during the day and I'm like, oh, wow, well, that was an interesting. What can we do to help? Is it writing letters to our legislators, or do we need to make public comment on something, or where can we chime in on this?
Well, I think it starts with trying to get Congress to step in and do something. And one of the ironies and one of the reasons why it's so important that this power remain in Congress is that you can reach your congressman and your senator and have some influence. You can write letters. You can call their offices. Most people are never going to be able to reach, say, the Secretary of Agriculture, even if they figure out who that is. So agencies really are insulated from voters and the American people in a way that Congress isn't. So there's an opportunity to tell your congressman, your senator, that the power exercised by administrative agencies concerns you and that you expect them to do something about it. The way we got here is that Congress was happy to kick the can over to agencies and let them write all the laws, because that way they weren't held accountable for it. And until the American people start holding Congress accountable once again, that's probably not going to change.
So we can write our legislators at their offices. So we're talking about our federal ones, not our local and state reps. So the two senators from each state, you figure out which one of them's yours, write them about it. Is there a website where people can go and read more information about what's going on?
Yes. The easiest way to find out more about this issue and really everything that PLF is involved in is through our website, which is pacificlegal.org.
Okay, so writing the letter, and then is there anything else?
Well, the other thing in what PLF is doing to try to vindicate the Congressional Review Act and vindicate the importance of democratic accountability is hold agencies accountable. We filed 2 lawsuits to enforce the Congressional Review Act against agencies that haven't complied. More people need to be looking at opportunities like that. If you're subject to a rule that is, threatening your business or your ability to use your property, that is an option you have to try to get the rule enjoined or struck down and force agencies to finally start complying with the law. Until these rules are sent to Congress and our elected representatives are answerable for their content, there's little reason to think that agencies are going to change their behavior. Accountability is what's necessary to ensure that agencies keep within the power they've been given.
I like it. I like the accountability aspect of it, and I like the way it puts the onus back on them, because they're able to get away from it when they say, oh, those regulations or those rules were proposed by that agency. So it's almost as if they're saying, I don't have anything to do with that. You can't get mad at me over that. When in reality, they give this power to agencies. They cede the power to them.
That's exactly right. My friend Tim Sandifer at the Goldwater Institute likes to say that the perfect law in the eye of many legislatures is a law that says there should be no bad thing, and then creates an agency charged with figuring out what bad things are and enforcing the law. That way, the politician can say, well, look, I solved all the bad things. And then when the agency does something, they say, oh, I didn't mean that. Go talk to the agency. Don't blame me. And really, that's what our modern federal government is about. Congress enacts very vague laws and punts most of the difficult decisions to agencies and then tries to avoid accountability for that.
Well, the way to stop it is for us to hold our government officials, the elected ones, accountable. And if they don't seem interested in doing anything about this, then they're not the right ones to be there for next time.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll have to definitely keep our eyes peeled and writing our legislators about this. You can head over to the Pacific Legal Foundation's website. Give that one more time, Jonathan.
PacificLegal.org.
PacificLegal.org. You can head over there, find out more about it, and then kind of craft up a letter. And it doesn't have to be lengthy, but you just have to make sure and include your address so they know you're their constituent, and then send it over and just keep a copy for yourself. You could make a little folder. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being totally effective, but I love having the folders where if everything of one item I just stick in that folder, then it is easier for me to find later. And you just keep a record of them. And then if you don't hear anything back straight off, just write them again. Post your letter to Facebook and tell some friends, hey guys, I wrote this letter. I'm not hearing anything back. Usually if you send a paper letter, though, they'll respond because they keep a record of who writes them on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm amazed about every time I talk to any of my friends that work on the Hill, that it really doesn't take that much. Whenever a congressman or senator hears from a few dozen constituents on one issue, they know to take that seriously, that they care and respond when you write letters like that.
Well, let's get to it, folks. We got to write our Congress critters and our senators about this unelected bureaucratic malaise that we're seeing, where they get to make rules up that hurt us, and we can't hold our elected officials accountable because they always defer to the agencies. We got to get things back in good working order. And I don't actually think it's impossible to do or even that difficult to do. We just have to remember to write the letters and hold them accountable. I think we may have lost him. All right. So that was Jonathan Wood, attorney for the Pacific Legal Foundation. Great to chat with him again and get an update on that issue. I would say, we're not taking any more callers this hour, you guys. We still have trolls calling into the show, trying to get on so they can spew their demonic profanity. And I actually think it's funny that these people are unemployed and actually so unintelligent that they think that getting on the radio and saying stuff like that is going to do what? Change people's minds, turn people into Democrats, make them love socialism, or it's going to disrupt the show and we're just going to be like, you know what? Forget it. We're just not going to do a show anymore. Like, what do they think is going to happen? So they're just calling in because they have nothing else to do. And also because their brains are really slow and they don't have a lot of ability to kind of discern between right and wrong behavior. Yeah, no thanks. So this is pretty interesting. Arizona now has a city that has migrant mobs roaming the streets, clashing with the residents. I mean, did you ever think this would happen in America? So let me give you the data here. It's Yuma, Arizona. You've heard of this place before, right? They're on the U.S. border. So Yuma, Arizona is just over the border from. Guys, I just got some extremely good news that just flashed across my computer, and that's why I sound like I'm just discombobulated. I just got some awesome news. Praise God. I'm going to deal with that later. Live radio, thank you for being with me, and thank you so much for your encouragement. That's to people who you've been reaching out or you've been putting in the comments, you've been DMing me. Thank you for that. I appreciate that so much. Okay, so this story is about Yuma, Arizona. Yuma is just over the border from Mexico, okay? Work with me, folks. this is ground zero for what we've all been talking about. And if you're one of those people, you've been praying, you've been, more power to you. Please don't stop. Please keep pounding on the gates of heaven on behalf of these border towns. These people don't deserve this stuff. They don't deserve it. So you got Yuma, Arizona. They've now declared a state of emergency. This was yesterday on Tuesday. They say they can't handle the crush of illegal immigrants the government is being forced to release onto their streets. Mayor Douglas Nichols said the migrants are being released by the Border Patrol into his community faster than they can leave. Local shelters are overflowing. There's no room for them. And you guys know how this is. If you live anywhere in the country, you'll see news stories, and they're usually not front page, about how shelters are at capacity. Police will arrest someone who's homeless out in one area of, the suburbs and bring them to one of the shelters, which are usually located downtown someplace. And if the shelter is at capacity, they're taking the person down there and dropping them off just to put them on another street. They lifted them off one street and put them on another. They do that because they want to keep the homeless kind of corralled in one location. But it doesn't stop a homeless person from hitchhiking or walking back out to any other place they think they might be able to get people to give them money at the overpass or at the stoplight or whatever. Now, take that situation where we have homeless shelters in America that are overflowing, so much so that a lot of homeless people already know there's no bed space for me at any homeless shelter, so I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to go find someplace else to spend the night, to sleep, wherever I can find to have some shelter against the elements. Well, this is a totally... this makes that situation look like a walk in the park, right? I mean, we're talking about mobs of people roaming the streets looking to satisfy basic human needs. They're clashing with citizens who are looking to protect their own property. He says there's an imminent threat on having too many migrant releases into our community. It's above our capacity as a community to sustain. Now, I already said yesterday, and I'm going to say it again, President Trump, you made the threat. Make good on it, sir. President Trump, it's time for you to start busing these people to the places where they belong, sanctuary cities, because the people of Yuma, Arizona don't deserve this. They don't deserve it. So he says it's an untenable situation, and they are begging the federal government to give them a solution. Mr. Nichols said he's also trying to get other Arizona communities to issue similar declarations, hoping that the critical mass of voices will cut through the partisan gridlock. Now, I don't think that's what's going to work. I don't think communities that are already receiving the illegal aliens on the border are going to be able to stop this. I also am wondering, when he says clashes, what kind of news story are we going to see? I mean, this is so unacceptable. Americans literally defending their property from roving gangs of migrants with guns? Is that where we are? You would think that the liberals would say, well, we got to stop that because we don't believe in guns. So we certainly don't want to give gun-owning Americans an excuse to defend themselves. But no, as long as you keep the illegal aliens out of San Francisco and, Connecticut, and as long as you keep it out of there, out of the sanctuary cities, New York City, they'll be fine. Keep on absorbing those immigrants. That's what they say. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's tyranny and it's sin run amok. And we have to have a stop to it. They're overwhelmingly families and unaccompanied children. Of the children and families that came in 2017, more than 98% of them are still in the U.S. at the beginning of this year. So, I don't know what they're going to do. We'll be back with more right after these messages. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. Illegal aliens cost the United States taxpayers an estimated $135 billion a year. Those same illegal aliens have sent an amount almost equal to that to 3 Central American nations since 2009. Annual remittances from illegal aliens living and working in the United States represent 20% of the economy in Honduras and El Salvador. Congress has made attempts to pass legislation taxing remittances at 7%. In 2016, immigrants in the United States sent home at least $130 $38 billion. 7% of that would be nearly $10 billion, an amount that represents a sizable chunk of the money requested by President Trump to finish the border wall. Leadership in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras understand that America's elected officials lack the will to tax remittances or stop their citizens from coming into the country illegally. Why improve their countries when they can send their citizens here and reap the windfall? I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Listen, do you really know who Jesus is? And let me help you to know who he is. When you think about all of these kind of false Jesuses that are floating around social media, you know the Jesus. You know, you got the ethnocentric Jesus, you got the political Jesus, the left-wing Jesus, you know, all these popular Jesuses. But the question I think all of us need to ask is, will the real Jesus stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up.
Tune in to Equipped, weekday afternoons at 12 Central on Urban Family Talk. Stacy Washington.
And so to this day, I don't eat green beans. If they bring me a plate of food at a restaurant and they've substituted green beans for some other vegetable because the other vegetable is out of season, I will make them bring me a saucer and remove the green beans from my plate and take them off of the table because I cannot abide green beans. And so Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have to sit down to the table and it's loaded up high with green beans and they have to stay there until they've eaten them all. That's the table they set. They boiled the green beans, they picked them, they snapped them, they put them into the steamer, they've cooked them, they seasoned them with salt and pepper, and now they're on the table with a little side of butter, and that's all they're getting, and they're going to have to eat these until they win.
Stacy on the Right, weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk. You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
What we're going to be looking for is there's 3 specific areas where I think there was some type of setup involved. So the first is involved with General Flynn. General Flynn was supposedly entrapped, was meeting with a Russian woman. I want to know what really happened there because, we're just now finding out about this and we need a lot more information on, what really was General Flynn doing, because it's a big deal if somebody within our intelligence agencies were accusing a 3-star general of having some type of Russian fleeing. It's serious stuff, and I want to get to the bottom of that. The second big question you have is Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud is how this whole investigation started. And let me tell you, Mueller describes him as some type of Russian asset of some kind. Well, if Joseph Mifsud was a Russian asset, we've got big problems with our British and Italian allies because he seems to be pictured with every British and Italian person that we know of. So that's something we also want to know about. And Mifsud was the guy who set up Papadopoulos.
So that was Representative Devin Nunes explaining what he'll be looking for in the Mueller report. And I want to get through the rest of that audio before we get to a breaking news story. And the story that we shared right before we went to break about Yuma, Arizona declaring a state of emergency over a surge of migrants. Oh my goodness. That is so upsetting. That is so ridiculous and out to just what did they think was going to happen? Just keep dumping people there and it was going to magically become something else. What's funny is they keep talking about how they get dumped into the border towns and they move elsewhere within the country. Well, not if they don't have family to receive them. If they're just there because they think they're going to come here and magically get jobs, then they're just roaming around waiting for that to materialize. And the people of Arizona, they have to be thinking, what do you expect us to do with all these people? What are they supposed to do? So, all right, I'm bouncing around here. Let me get back to this. Representative Nunes is talking about the Mueller report, which comes out tomorrow. And he had 3 things that he felt were he was going to see, like his expectations. He kind of blocked them off into three separate things. It's number 6.
Finally, the third issue I'm going to know about is this infamous Trump Tower meeting. When you hear the Democrats talk about that there's evidence in plain sight, well, the Russians that are involved in the Trump Tower, the infamous Trump Tower meeting in New York, I call them the Fusion GPS Russians. Fusion GPS was the company that was working for the Clinton campaign and the Democrats, and somehow Glenn Simpson meets with them before and after, and he's actually, these are Russians that he's doing work for. I mean, come on. If Mueller can't get to the bottom of this and answer this for the American people, I don't know what the report was really worth.
So what was it worth? Well, 30 some odd $30 million, I think, and a lot of really toil and upset for the American people and for those who were caught up in the dragnet trying to find something that they could pin on Donald Trump. And again, if you're just tuning into the show and you've never heard me talk about it before, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'm never going to condone, tax evasion or embezzlement or any of the other things that some of the people who were in Trump world briefly, however briefly they were ensnared in for years before they ever knew Donald Trump or afterward. What is so interesting about it is that people have characterized President Trump as being this really dirty individual who just everything he does is so wrong. People who work for him had some interesting things that they were involved in. Some of them are only in trouble because they couldn't accurately remember emails and phone conversations from years before, and their mixed characterizations in one interview were used in another interview to paint them as lying to Congress, lying to the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. Never mind Hillary's behaviors and stuff like that. And I know somebody out there they're jumping, they're triggered. People get so mad when I bring up Hillary's emails or the scandals of the Obama administration because he was scandal-free and Hillary Clinton's never lied to anyone. Yeah. Go ahead, and if you're triggered, I mean, God bless. Be you. Be the best person you can be, triggered or otherwise. But it is something to see all of this hubbub, and Donald Trump, we still haven't seen anything on him. So I don't excuse what other people did that got them in trouble, but I also think it's really unfair to ask someone what their emails say and then charge them with lying to you if they don't accurately recount what emails from years before say. They didn't do that to Hillary. So anyway, so there's that. And then I said we're going to pivot back over to 2 more things. We got 2 more things here. First, Beto O'Rourke joining the proud tradition of indignant Democratic wealth hoarders. Now, we talked about Bernie Sanders, right? Well, Beto, his real name is like Francis or something, he is not the only one. It's not just Francis. You got multimillionaire Nancy Pelosi. A heckler recently asked her about her net worth during a discussion on income inequality. She dismissed him. Multimillionaire Harry Reid, he was lamenting about the fixed income of a U.S. senator. He's worth millions of dollars, by the way. Multimillionaire Barack Obama describing a $172,000 annual salary as relatively modest. Now, you got to be out of touch as a black person in America, permanently tanned as he is, to say that $172,000 is a relatively modest income. Now, it is if you're worth millions of dollars. $172,000 is modest if you're worth millions. But to most Americans, that is upper class. Oh, pardon me. That's upper class. That is upper class. For a family of 4, $172,000. Now, if you live in New York City, it's a pittance. But if you live anywhere else in the country besides the coast, you're living large on 172. And so, again, it doesn't matter if that's what you make or if that's what you want to make or if you never have a desire to make that. The point is, these people are elected officials. They're supposed to represent the people. So if they could just refrain from calling upper class income relatively modest, it would just be helpful. That's all I'm saying. Just, help a sister out. Multi-millionaire climate evangelist Al Gore. Remember him? He shrugged off his critics. Remember when he sold out to Qatari they had oil money, and there was that whole big deal that he went through and it made him really wealthy? He dismissed that too. You got Bernie Sanders, who says, if you write a best-selling book, you can be a millionaire too. Well, no, you can't. I'm going to go ahead and break some truth off for you. If you're someone who's made yourself famous on peddling failed socialist ideals to kids who haven't yet paid taxes, they're still living on their parents' dime, they're in college, or young millennials who have not yet had their first child and realize that life is a lot more real than kitschy slogans and silhouettes of an old guy, then yeah, you might find his ideas fine. But for real adults, that whole idea that you're going to get free college and free health care, someone's still got to pay for it. And then there's Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I'll put this link up. The author of the piece recommends that you bookmark it because I guess he's going to keep updating it with all the candidates and all their millions. Bill and Hillary Clinton, they're worth multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. Beto O'Rourke, Francis, he earned $3.4 million between 2008 and 2017. He only donated $24,300 to charity during that period. That's 0.7% of his total income. In 2017, he made $366,455, and he donated just 0.3% to charity. Now, we all know that the Bible calls us to give the tithe, which is the first 10%. We also know that in Christendom here in America, many, many Americans do not meet that mark. That is an issue between each of us as individuals and our Father in heaven. Obedience in paying the tithe rebukes the devourer from off of your income and your home and everything else. It provides you with surety because God promises to open up the windows of heaven and bless you in ways that you cannot measure. He'll give you so much more than what you can even use. Your cup will not only overflow, but the blessings will chase you down and overtake you. And it's not just financial blessings. It is blessings overall because obedience brings blessing. That was just a little bit for us Christians. Take it, do with it what you will. But for Francis O'Rourke, who we don't know what his faith walk is, he's not even doing well by the standards of philanthropists and, even the little people who judge us for every little thing that we do. They usually give a lot of their income or a percentage of their income to charity. And they do that because it gives them a tax break. They also do that because it gives them the ability to be seen in front of step and repeats and have this just outsized, they kind of get to look down on everybody else because they're not only rich, but they give a lot of money. They like to do it in public so everybody can see it. And Beto O'Rourke must not have gotten the note because he's not giving hardly anything. Now, he's good at talking about what all the rest of us should do, but it turns out he's not doing much at all. Now, he and his wife, Amy, listed assets worth as much as $16 million in their 2018 financial disclosure form. They have a trust in Amy's name that's worth between $1 and $5 million. And recently, somebody actually asked him about the fact that he's just charitably delinquent at a forum that he was hosting. They were like, what exactly is going on with you? Well, he said he does public service. He contributes to the success of his community in ways that are immeasurable. He says that immeasurable contribution should be stacked up against his measurable contributions, including additional charitable donations he claimed to have made without reporting them. It doesn't get much better than that, y'all. So he really doesn't give that much. Here's the breakdown of all of these Democratic candidates. Beto O'Rourke gives 0.31%, so 1/3 of 1% of his income to charity. Kamala Harris gives 1.4%. Gillibrand, 1.7%. Klobuchar, 1.9%. Bernie Sanders gives 3.4%. Inslee, 4%. And Liz Warren, I wonder if she gives all of these donations to the tribe that she comes from. Anyway, she gets 5.5%, which is respectable. So, look, Joe Biden, who is also pretty rich, gives an average of $369 a year to charity in the years leading up to being selected as Barack Obama's running mate. And he barely increased his giving after taking office. Now that's chintzy. All right, so then there are others that they're going to add to this as they announce for the presidency, and they'll be like, it's like my running list of assaults at Target that I update on my blog. This is going to be like that. So we need to post up. We'll post a link of this online. So I just, there's that story, and then I think I have one more breaking news story for you. And if you head over to my Twitter feed, you'll see it actually. There's a story out about an illegal alien person, and he came into the country, and while he was here, he came here illegally. He set up a prostitution business on Capitol Hill. It was a regular weekly rendezvous at Union Station on Capitol Hill, just a short walk from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's office in the Hart Building. And he called himself El Comandante. He would drive his black Hyundai Santa Fe and take the prostitutes around the streets of D.C. He's an El Salvadoran man who's in the United States illegally, and he was finally sentenced today to over 2 years in prison for running an illegal commercial business of prostitution that catered to the Hispanic community in Northern Virginia. This started way back in 2001. Yes, I said 2001. 2001, this El Salvadoran comes into the country illegally and starts running a prostitution ring and does so unabated, untouched, until now. He's now been sentenced for doing that. He's 33 years old now, but when he came in, he was 15. He enrolled in Henrenden High School and basically stayed there until he completed the 10th grade. And then after that, he worked for a construction company and an auto repair business. He worked as an HVAC tech. And in addition to those jobs, he ran the illegal prostitution ring. So I don't know how many more of these stories we have to share online and on the show. How many more of these stories we have to tweet out. How many more people have to talk about these stories before those who are advocating for illegal immigration and the drug cartels finally just say enough is enough. You're right. We should seal the border. Roving gangs of migrants attacking Yuma, Arizona, American citizens. This guy running a prostitution ring on Capitol Hill. You know, Kate Steinle's killer not being convicted of murder. How much more do we have to take? All right, my allergies have kicked in, and that's the end of the show for today. God bless you. Pray for our nation. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.